And it looks like the ship is slowly turning for us. And a sustainable, solid, pretty decent brand of footy is slowly starting to entrench itself in the modern day North Melbourne identity and blueprint. And I couldn't be prouder of that performance today, of the turnaround over the last 9 weeks. And I dare to dream what we can still achieve in season 2025.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Kanga TV, home of North Melbourne fans, and if only I knew then what I know now, I think I would have been cautiously optimistic following that incredible win against Carlton a month ago. It feels like another lifetime, to be honest. Sitting here at the end of round 19, North Melbourne went down by 31 points to the Sydney Swans. Sydney 12-12-84, North 7-11-53 at the SCG, Saturday late afternoon. Another loss, another 5+ goal loss since that Carlton game. So the story has been going, and it's really hard to front the camera today in particular, trying to find something out of that loss to Sydney yesterday. I sat here after the D's game. I was pretty angry. I was pretty vocal about being angry. I just thought the way we failed to sort of back up what should have been a big game the week before against the Dogs. We just let the D's run on top of us. We faced a better opposition yesterday in the Swans, and we stuck with them for 3 quarters, as the story has been pretty much the last 4 weeks. We've stuck with the opposition for a portion of the game, and then the class and their opposition best players have flexed their muscles and they've just run away with it. And it's tiring, and I don't blame majority of the fan base for starting to feel fatigued and disengaged with the club at this point of the season. There's only so much hope you can sell to a fan base before that hope kind of runs out. If you go so long with just putting out competitive patches of football and sticking with the opposition for a period of time before falling away, doesn't really do anything for anyone, really. So there's a bit to unpack in this one, as always. We'll jump straight into it before we do a couple of things. My t-shirt today is a Riley Hardiman t-shirt. We all love Riley Hardiman here at Kanga TV. It has been gifted to me by Hustle and Flow. They have the best tees. I will leave the link for that one in the description down below. Also, I will leave the description to the Instagram giveaway. There's a couple of days left. I've teamed up with Footy Finds. You guys have been an incredible support to both myself and Mitch throughout season 2025, and we wanted to come together and give you guys a little something to say thank you. So there is a vintage North Melbourne tee up for grabs. The competition ends on Tuesday, the 22nd of July, so I will leave a link in the description down below as well. Give yourself an opportunity to win that one. It is only an Instagram competition, so make sure you jump over there. All right, there's a little bit to talk about, so let's get straight into it and put this one to bed before we move on to next week. I guess the best place to start is the difference between our best and the best players for the Swans. The game was pretty much one off the boot of Issac Heeney. He was the difference. He's a phenomenal player, and we just had no answers for him. Tom Powell played on him in the first half, and then I believe Luke Parker moved on to him in the second, but it didn't seem like Parks was playing too closely to Heeney. He just ran all over the top of us, and he was the difference yesterday, probably him alongside Brodie Grundy, which we'll get to in a second. But the difference between the Swans' best and our best is sort of night and day. I sat here last week and brought attention to the game of captain Jai Simkin, who I thought completely failed to step up in his role as captain last week and inspire his side. When the game was in the balance, he was nowhere to be seen. And yesterday, I thought Jai was probably one of our best. I thought he really did throw himself in the contest where he needed to, and he definitely did do what he could to try and rectify the performance against the D's last week. But of Jai's 28 touches yesterday, 10 of them were turnovers. So you've got a third of his disposal went straight to the other side. And that's by and large, like that there is the difference. You've got our arguably best player on the day alongside LDU, who just gifted the ball back to the opposition when the opposition in Issac Heeney is having, a career best game, 30 odd touches, 5 goals, and the difference on the day. And we know that we don't get enough goals from our midfield. While our clearance work is great, I think that is where other midfields do step up and sort of flex their muscles in a game where we were able to somewhat nullify the influence of Brodie Grundy by evening up the clearance game in the middle of the ground and around the ground. But the influence of the likes of a Heeney in comparison to what Jai is doing with the ball, and I don't mean to put the spotlight on Jai now for the second week in a row, but it's hard not to use that as the example when it's staring right at you. I thought having LDU back in the middle was great, and you can clearly see he is such an important part to this midfield, and he's just a class above. For LDU, sure, he has the ability to win the clearance, and he has the ability to sidestep an opponent, and he has the ability to start a chain, moving the ball down to the other end of the ground. But for a lot of the time with LDU, it's a dump kick out of the middle into the forward line, and that is the story, I think, for North. You've got Jai turning the ball over. You've got LDU with this persistent dump kick, and that just ripples throughout the rest of the side. I thought Griffin Lowe yesterday, really good game defensively, but offensively his disposal is atrocious. And these aren't young guys. Like, these are not young players. These are not inexperienced players. These are our leaders. Like, these are the guys who are meant to be the ones setting the example for the younger kids coming through. What chance does a Harry Sheasel or a Colby McKercher or a Finn O'Sullivan even have to learn and to develop and to improve if this is what our most experienced players are doing with ball in hand? It's outrageous. What chance do we have here? It's really hard to watch, and it's very, very frustrating. And I think we've all known for a very, very long time that our disposal needs work. No one is shying away from that. But my God, yesterday we killed the game ourselves. There were patches in the game yesterday that threw me back to a comment that Luke Parker made upon his arrival at North Melbourne. And he said that he couldn't believe how much we were actually doing right. He said we were almost trying to be too perfect with ball in hand. And I think that is actually becoming a problem for us as well. And I've said this a few times over the season, but when we are entering into the forward 50, there are 4 or 5 hand passes or little chip kicks on the 50-metre arc to try and find the perfect avenue into the forward 50 or find the perfect position to line up for goal. We overthink it and we overpossess, and then we end up turning the ball over. And before we know it, the opposition's got it and they're going the opposite way. We need to stop thinking so much, and we actually just need to action what we know we can do. 5, 6, 7 hand passes, we end up just working ourselves either 50 metres further away from our goals, or we end up turning the ball over. Cooper Harvey yesterday kicked a goal from the boundary line off one step. He's not thinking about it. He's just doing it. And maybe the less we think, the better, because the more we're overthinking it and we're overcooking the ball, it's to our detriment. And I just think that we are our worst enemies. And that was highlighted once again in the game yesterday. And I understand that there were circumstances going into that game that were out of our control. Obviously, Tristian Xerri is not there. And I know Nick Larkey's not there. But there are enough players in that side who take the field every single week that should be able to cover our losses. Brynn Teakle and Callan Coleman-Jones should be AFL standard ruckman. And Callan Coleman-Jones has probably finished his AFL career, a calf injury, subbed out after quarter time yesterday. I can't imagine we'll see him again, which is really, really unfortunate. Brynn Teakle, who's meant to be a depth player ruckman, was best when he was up forward in the first quarter. He barely had the physicality or the tank to go with Brodie Grundy. And I understand that Grundy is one of the best ruckmen in the competition, one of the informed ruckmen in the competition at the moment. But you've got to at least be able to match him. I think the hitouts were 70-7 at one point. Like, that's just ludicrous. And like I said, we were at least able to nullify Grundy's influence slightly by our ability to match it at clearance. But like, that's really not good enough. And then you've got the likes of Nick Larkey sidelined. I understand that. But Charlie Comben couldn't get near the ball. Paul Curtis and Cam Zerha, who have both had really, really good seasons, just could not find ways to fire. They couldn't really find ways to get involved. Jack Darling was fine, but also like not really anywhere to be seen closer to goal. I felt like he was pushing up further afield. And the one thing that really frustrated me in that first quarter with Jack Darling is, why was he doing the rucking when CCJ was having a break? That should have been tackle. I can't understand sometimes the logic behind some of the moves that we're making in game from week to week. I didn't hate that we threw Charlie Comben forward. I think we did need to try something different after last week, but it obviously didn't work. So once again, we'll have to go back to the drawing board and shuffle the magnets once again before we face Geelong next Saturday night. I do believe that Nick Larkey will return next Saturday night, so that will solve that problem up forward. And I do think that we do have some prospects forward of the ball, like a Finbar we could recall if we needed to. There are definitely options there that we can kind of resort to, but it was definitely a disappointing and lackluster display across 4 quarters. There's not really much more I can say. I guess the one thing that really concerns me now compared to where we have been sort of previously in the first sort of 12, 13, 14 rounds of the season is we were running out games really, really strongly prior to the bye and sort of in that first month after the bye. But the last 4 weeks, we've been easily overwhelmed in the fourth quarter. It's pretty much since the Carlton game, and I'm going to exclude the Hawthorn game because that game, like, it's almost as if we didn't get off the plane in Launceston. But the other 4 games, we have almost like turned off at 3/4 time, and we just allow teams to run over the top of us in the final quarter. And I understand that it may not be possible for us to play 4 quarters of good football week in, week out, but you cannot just not show up in the final quarter. And this is like the 4th time in 5 weeks that it's happened, even against Carlton. And I understand that we probably had that game wrapped up at 3/4 time, and I understand we're able to withstand the pressure that the Blues threw at us. And there is an element of importance when it comes to just grinding out periods of time. The 3rd quarter against the Swans yesterday, we just had to grind that one out. It was really frustrating to watch, and it was pretty boring. But sometimes you do just have to match what the opposition is throwing at you. But then in the 4th quarter yesterday, again, for the Swans to just come out and overwhelm us, they kicked 2 or 3 goals in the opening 3 or 4 minutes, and that was the game there. It was only 2 goals of difference at 3/4 time. Like, it's really annoying. And I understand we're inexperienced, and I understand that we're missing key players. But like I said, there's got to be enough in there at the moment that we can still remain competitive for 4 quarters. If you remain competitive and you still fall down by 4 or 5 goals, then fine. It kind of is what it is. And I don't even like that we have to accept that possibility. But we've turned off the engine at 3/4 time 4 in the past 5 weeks. From a team that was finishing off games so strongly. I think about the Fremantle game. I think about the game against West Coast. I think about the game against, even Essendon or Port. Like, these games were coming really, really hard as the game went on. And I understand you've got to find a balance to remain somewhat consistent for the 4 quarters, but it's like night and day at the moment, and it's very, very hard to watch, and it's very, very hard to remain optimistic or inspired when this is sort of what we're getting week in, week out, and it's almost becoming a little bit Groundhog Day-esque. It's kind of becoming predictable. You're kind of thinking we can't even enjoy the positive signs of sticking with the Swans for 3 quarters because we know how this one's going to end. And I've said a few times this year that I don't want to accept honourable losses, and I don't want to accept encouraging performances or signs, because you become complacent and you lose sight of what's important, and that's the 4 points at the end of the day. And I feel like that's kind of where we're stuck now. There's 5 games left until the end of the season, and We're back in 17th on the ladder, and I know we're 17th, but we're 6 points ahead of where we were this time last year. It's still pretty sucky, if I'm honest. Like, all that potential and all that promise to be back in 17th on the ladder and staring at another bottom 2 finish. Kind of like on a hamster wheel that we can't really get out of at the moment. And I am sort of lost for what the answers are sitting here today. I understand that luck can play a big part in a game or in a season as a whole for a side, and yesterday was another chapter of unlucky for North Melbourne. Callum Coleman-Jones playing his first game for season 2025, first game since doing his Achilles last year on Good Friday, and a quarter goes by and he's subbed out with a calf injury. Like I said before, probably the last time we'll see him. Unfortunately, just, I don't know if he'll ever be able to get his body right. I know a calf injury after an Achilles is quite common. We've seen the same thing with Josh Goda, but he hasn't really shown enough in my mind that he's worth persisting with. Now, if he can't get his body right, how much more can you invest in somebody when we do have a few tools coming through and should hopefully develop nicely over the next 12 to 24 months. Paul Curtis, a goal that was overturned, that should have been a goal in the third quarter, probably would have given us a little bit of momentum and a little bit of belief going into the fourth quarter. But as unlucky as that was, the onus is on us to dig deeper and find that belief and find that momentum. I understand that momentum and that shift is not measurable and it's not tangible, but it definitely plays on the confidence of a side. And I feel like we have to stop with the victim mentality and this always happens to North, and just take responsibility for our own outcome and take destiny into our own hands a little bit. So couldn't not address those couple of things that happened to us throughout the game, but as pivotal as they were and in key moments that they came, I think, we've kind of got to put it back on us a little bit to rectify those misfortunes and put ourselves back on the path, on the straight and narrow. There are a few things I do want to talk about on the back of yesterday's game, and the main one is the comment that came from Jared Healy. I think it was late in the third quarter. He made a comment that Cam Zerha is way too of an inconsistent player and he's got to find a way to just show up every single week and deliver consistently. And I think that is the biggest myth of season 2025. Cam Zerha wasn't great yesterday. It wasn't even like a nothing day. Like, he did have a bit of a dirty day. He was dropping marks and he was a little bit fumbly, and pretty much the whole side was. I feel like there were 2 teams out there, but only one team was slipping and sliding around. But Cam Zerha's game yesterday was just the second game so far this season where he's been goalless. And the only other time he's been goalless this season was against Fremantle, where he was battered and bruised from pillar to post. And the only way that Freo were able to stop him was by literally wounding the man. I think Cam Zerha's had an excellent year. He's been able to play that genuine third tall forward role. He's had a proper matchup for the first time in a very, very long time with the inclusion of Jack Darling in the side. He's really flown under the radar for me, and I feel like we've seen these massive match-winning games from Cam Zerha, and we expect him to do that every single week, and it's quite frankly just not possible. We saw what he did in the third quarter against the D's last week. He kicked 3 goals 3 or 3 goals 2, and he was the one to actually bring the game back on our terms and kind of give us a sniff going into 3-quarter time. And there wasn't really much more he could do in that game. And a quarter like that, or a performance like that, is absolutely what he's capable of. But I would much rather have a consistent Cam Zerha who's able to contribute with 2, 3, 4 goals, which he has been doing pretty much consistently every single week this season, than having these outrageously good games and then go missing for 3 weeks. And I think we really need to readjust our expectation on someone like Bull. I think for us, consistency is the key, and consistency is what we're getting. And because he's not pulling out a King of Marvel performance every single week, that's not necessarily a bad thing. He's got the match-winning ability, and he has shown that in patches of games throughout this season. But if we're sitting here at the end of every week and he's got 2-3 goals to his name, that's something I would much, much, much prefer than, like I said, the alternative and what we are used to seeing from Xerri, which is these outrageous games once every 4 to 5 weeks and then he goes missing. I just wanted to address that because that comment really infuriated me. I think it was an incredibly uneducated comment to make, and it was quite frankly wrong. Cam Xerri's had just about his career best year, his most consistent season to date, and as a North supporter, I've been extremely pleased with his output and his contribution to this side. There's other players I would point the finger at before Bull in saying they've been inconsistent and that they just haven't had the season that we've needed them to have. The other two players I just quickly wanted to touch on, I thought Finn O'Sullivan was just outstanding yesterday, and I think his contribution to this side in season 2025 has also been wonderful. I think he did take a little while to adjust to AFL level, but what he can do under pressure, he is just so nonchalant and he's so unfazed with ball in hand. He's a very, very good decision maker, and I do really trust him with ball in hand. I think he can be a really strong asset for us going forward. I would like to see him start pushing up a little bit higher up the ground now. I know there was talk over the commentary yesterday as well that maybe Colby McKercher needs to be brought forward of the centre. We know that Colby, when he moved back into defence from that Richmond game, is when he's really been able to refine his best footy. So I wouldn't have an issue with keeping him there alongside Riley Hardiman and then move Foss higher up the ground, more to a wing position. I think he went at about 85% disposal efficiency yesterday, Foss, and I don't think we can really ask for much more from him at this point. I think he's been awesome. And then Cooper Harvey, again, just a little shout out, a couple of goals yesterday, our only multiple goal kicker. He didn't do too much outside of that yesterday, but he did contribute on the scoreboard when we needed him to. I thought he was great. I do think that there's grounds there for him to receive another 1-year extension, and just sort of see what he can do, see if he can back it up next year. At the moment, I think he's keeping his spot in that side, and I really hope that we can find a way to continue bringing the best footy out of him, because it's definitely, while small glimpses, it's definitely the most promising signs we've seen from him since entering the AFL system. So just another quick shout out to him as well. The last player I wanted to touch on is Harry Sheezel, and I'm definitely concerned with where Harry is sitting at the moment. He just doesn't look like himself. He's definitely had games this year where he's been good and he's been able to contribute to this side. I don't know how much of the unsettled nature of the first half of his season has contributed to his form overall this year. He played 4 or 5 different roles over the first half of the year, and he definitely copped a lot of heat from the media, which I think all combined probably just didn't really sit well with him. But we're now, 5-6 weeks into him permanently playing in that sort of mid to forward role, and he's been fine, but he's definitely not where we need him to be and not where we're used to him being. And I don't know how to bring the best footy out of him. Is it a lack of support in the middle? I wouldn't have thought so, with the likes of an LDU coming back in yesterday and playing a really, really solid game. I thought Tom Powell, while he got his hands on the footy a lot, probably wasn't so damaging like we probably needed him to be. I kind of sit here and look at Tom Powell's game and think, well, what did you really do when you had the ball in hand? I don't know what the answer is to support Harry. I don't know if moving him into defence and maybe then allowing Finn O'Sullivan, maybe the two of them do a little bit of a role swap. I'm not really sure. Just letting him get his hands on the footy a little bit more. I'm not sure, but, again, it's the same thing when you look at the likes of an Issac Heeney or an Errol Goulden and what they were able to do with ball in hand compared to an LDU or a Simkin or a Sheezel. It's kind of night and day. And it is a little bit worrying, and I think we do need to, I don't know if it's a reset, if it's just a completely different game plan, just try something completely different in the last 5 rounds of the season. It's going to be really, really hard to keep fans engaged and keep fans optimistic in the last portion of the season. I said earlier, I don't blame fans for feeling disengaged and disinterested and almost fatigued at this point of the season. We've had some really high highs, but now it kind of appears like we've flatlined back into mediocrity. And for a lot of people, they're questioning if they show up. we have 3 games left in Melbourne for the rest of the season. Along with that, another home game in Hobart. It's our last home game there before we wrap up. And there's definitely a couple of winnable games on paper in the last 5 rounds of the season. But who's actually going to be there to watch it? I know I'll be there. And that's just part and parcel of my relationship with football. I go week in, week out. It's a non-negotiable for me. But I understand that there are some people who are genuinely sitting there and contemplating, do I even show up? I would encourage you to show up if you can. Football's a weird and wonderful game, and I've seen stranger things happen than rabbits being pulled out of hats this late in the season, especially when there's some sides that we are set to face who have one eye already on September. One of those sides is Geelong this Saturday night at Marvel Stadium. Hopefully as many of you can get there as possible and we can cheer on a miracle performance. It's hard to imagine that there'll be a different script for this game coming up, but hey, I don't know, anything's possible. And at the end of the day, I want to believe that this side still has a little bit left in the tank to give before season's end, but that's just how I'm feeling sitting here thinking about where the season has gone and what is left to come. I'd love to hear from you guys though. How are you feeling after that one at the SCG? You can leave all of your thoughts in the comments down below. We can continue chatting as well over on socials, Kanga TV Show on Instagram, Facebook, X, and on email. I just want to say, I know that it is a very rinse and repeat situation for a lot of North supporters at the moment, and I understand that there's probably a little bit of a fracture for a lot of the fan base and their relationship with the club at the moment. I'm definitely feeling it a little bit here on the channel as well. So for those of you who are still here and who do watch the videos on the channel on a week-to-week basis still, I just want to thank you all so much. Your support truly means the world to me, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys. And I really hope that this channel and this community can be a really key part in North Melbourne's turnaround and rise up the ladder in the near future. But for now, it's a pleasure to be able to ride the weekly highs and lows of supporting this football club with you all, and I thank you all for sticking by me up until this point of the season, and as many of you stay on for the remainder of the season as it comes. I will see you all during the week. We will preview all things Geelong at Marvel Stadium on Saturday night. Go Roos.